Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts about the 40k universe. I am your host Gershwan and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Carcharodons. This is series or part 3 in the series. So if you have not checked out part 1 and you don't know who the Carcharodon Spacemarine chapter is, please click on the link above or below. That's going to take you to the very first video in this series. And again, if you have any suggestions or if you have not subscribed yet, we post Warhammer 40k videos every single day, so be sure to comment down below to let us know what you want and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into 40 facts about the Carcharodons. During the Angevin Crusade that conquered the Calyx Expanse and founded what would eventually become known as the Calyx Sector, the rogue trader Basil Horothis led his ship, the Starvenger, and a considerable force of naval armsmen against the debased Dark Eldar pirates on the world of Loth. However, Horothis found his forces much reduced in the fighting on that world of perpetual night, beneath the eternal rolling clouds and illuminated only by the intermittent flashes of lightning. The rogue trader's armsmen suffered greatly from the savage hit-and-run raid of the Cabal of Shadowed Thorns. Even as Horothis realized his error and made plans to withdraw from Loth's accursed surface, the Cabal of the Shadowed Thorns struck the Starvenger. A sudden attack from a flight of razor-wing fighters crippled the cruiser's main drives, slowing the starship out of low orbit. The damage left Horothis with only one choice: testing his considerable skills as a ship handler. He attempted planetfall aboard the Venger. The ship did not reach the ground easily, and only through the considerable skills of Horothis and his master helmsman, Orgeth Keel, did the Venger survive at all. However, their landing left them in an arguably worse predicament than mere death. Trapped within their beached vessel, Horothis and his crew found themselves surrounded by foes. Quickly, the Dark Eldar encircled the ship and its hastily defensive fortifications, striking at random to kill and capture slaves. All Horothis could do was send out an astropathic plea for deliverance, and use the ship's batteries in an attempt to keep the Xenos pirates at bay. After a solar month, the Venger's guns were all but spent, and many of her crew whisked away in the darkness. The Cabal of Shadowed Thorns grew bold, and began to press a sustained attack into the downed void ship. The fighting reached the bridge, but as Horothis and his retainers struggled desperately against a press of witch gladiators, help arrived. Suddenly, 2 bolts of bruised color lightning split the mass of witches, slaying some outright and scattering the rest. The strikes left behind 2 hulking gray-clad figures, fuming with hoarfrost and reeking of ozone. Without a pause, the 2 Space Marine Terminators tore into the witches with hissing lightning claws. In moments, the decks were slick with gore, and the panicked remnants were fleeing for their lives. The same happened all across the vessel. The survivors told of hundreds of assault terminators, though there could not have been more than a dozen, appearing wherever the battle was thickest to rip through the invaders with savage butchery. So fierce was the counterattack that the Dark Eldar quickly fled the Venger. On the shadow-shrouded plains beyond the hall, Thunderhawks disgorged 70 gray-clad warriors armed with bolters and blades. Confusion, fear, and rage overtook the Dark Eldar pirates, and they flew toward the Space Marines. No doubt they intended bloody vengeance. However, the Space Marines awaited the assault implacably, drawn up in a loose rank outside their gunships. They did not fire a single shot, even when beams of dark energy began to crackle overhead. When the fastest Scourger were no more than 100 meters from a Space Marine's line, the Emperor's Chosen sprung their trap. The gloomy surface of Loth knew light for the first time in eons, as searing lance beams split the clouds. In an incredible display of precision targeting, they scoured the ground around the Venger and the Space Marines to boiling lava, incinerating the Dark Eldar to ash. Only then did the Space Marines spring into action, hunting the survivors until they fled, wailing back to their webway gate. In the aftermath of the incident, Horothis spoke briefly with the commander of the Space Marines. Horothis later described the Astartes as deathly pale, with blank black eyes and sharp teeth. Speaking only in ancient High Gothic, he informed Horothus that reinforcement from the crusade were inbound, and politely but firmly requested a tithe of war supplies from the Venger's vaults. He refused to identify himself or his men, and departed 3 solar days before the arrival of Imperial Navy outriders. It was only after the Crusade's inquisitorial representative questioned Horothus, now busy establishing his estate on Loth, that they realized that these Space Marines belonged to no chapter affiliated with the Crusade, and drew connections between ancient myths of a long-forgotten chapter. In another very well-known tale, arriving without warning in the year 910 of the 41st millennium, the sudden appearance of the Carcharodons chapter fleet caused alarm for both the Loyalist and Secessionist forces operating within the Maelstrom Zone. An unidentified, fire-blackened Space Marine strike cruiser identified itself with ancient, though still valid, Imperial authorization protocol. The unidentified Space Marine force had come to offer its aid to the Loyalist cause against the Secessionists, claiming to have come in answer to a summon from Terra itself. They identified their chapter as the Carcharodons Astra, using the ancient High Gothic form of their name, or the Space Sharks in Low Gothic, and formally requested the Loyalists' permission to enter the war zone and draw blood. Upon their arrival, the Carcharodons' force commanders, Tiberius, presented the inquisitorial legate in charge of prosecuting the Badab conflict with notice patent provided to the chapter affirming the rights and titles issued to it by several High Lords of Terra and Inquisitors now long dead. Tiberius even submitted himself for psychic probing and gene sampling. The Inquisitor legate vouched for the Carcharodons. Lord High Commander Carville Cole of the Red Scorpions, the Magister Militant, or Supreme Commander of all the Loyalist forces, accepted the Carcharodons into his line of battle, although he was still wary of their loyalty and their deviation from the Codex Astarte during their long voyage beyond Imperial space. The Carcharodons were initially deployed to the Endymion cluster after their return to Imperial space, the territory governed by the secessionist Mantis Warriors chapter, rather than the Badab sector. They systematically annihilated planets in the cluster known to have harbored the Mantis Warriors, to force that chapter to stop using these hit-and-run tactics and mass their force in defense of these worlds, a strategy that spared the Carcharodons from having to pursue them across the cluster to places where their foes held the advantage of support and local knowledge. In the year 913 of the 41st millennium, during the final battle of the Badab War on Badab Primaris, the homeworld of the renegade Astroclaws chapter and Huron, the tyrant of Badab, the Carcharodons sabotaged the ancient atomic and geothermal reactors which powered the world's hive cities and fed its hungry planetary defense batteries with energy. This resulted in a planetary tectonic upheaval, with entire hive city sectors collapsing in yawning chasms that opened up in the ground beneath them, replaced by seas of molten lava. After the death of Badab Primaris, the remaining secessionists from the Astroclaws, Executioners, Mantis Warriors, and Lamenters chapters were put on trial before a special convened consistorial court of their peers in the Adeptus Astarte. Before departing the Maelstrom Zone for good, the Carcharodons chapter fleet returned to the Endymion cluster. There, with the agreement of the Firehawks, they struck at the Tranquility System, whose worlds were once the primary recruiting and training ground of the Mantis Warriors. From these worlds, they harvested an entire generation of recruits to renew their own losses, forcing those they selected to fight to the death to prove their worth in order to survive as Carcharodon neophytes. Thus paid in blood, the Carcharodon fleet departed, the last known sighting of them made by the explorator Augury Beacon, which marked them tacking course from the warp, ascending above the galactic plane and into the blackness of the outer void once more. The current whereabouts and operational activities of the Carcharodons remains unknown. The Firehawks' own disappearance while traveling through the warp thus left the Mantis Warriors free to return to their ancestral chapter domain once their century-long penitent crusade was over. And those were 40 facts about the Carcharodons. That closes the Carcharodons series of videos. So if you guys want to learn more about the Carcharodons, I would say click on the link below. That's going to take you to the wiki page, and there's more information there that we did not cover in this video series. And again, guys, I want to thank you so much for liking, commenting, and sharing. Because you guys do that, we can do these awesome giveaways that we have going on this week. So again, guys, thank you for everything, and I'll see you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.